Good morning and welcome. This is Richard Sachs. I'm Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Rio Grande and Rio Grande Community College, located in Rio Grande, Ohio, and other locations throughout beautiful southeastern Appalachian, Ohio. I'm delighted today to have Instructor of Communication Larry Ewing with me. Larry's been a teacher here for a long time and at various institutions throughout the region. The reason Larry's here today is we are entering the third of 9 months of our Multicultural Film Series. And on Sunday nights, generally the final Sunday of the month in Wood Hall, we're showing multicultural films from a number of different cultures. We started that series with The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. Last month we did Eat, Drink, Man, Woman in Chinese with subtitles. And this month, in just 10 days now, on Sunday, October 25th, in the evening in Wood Hall Auditorium, we'll be doing The Seven Samurai, directed by Akiro Kurosawa. Came out in 1954, an extraordinary film, and Larry will be facilitating it. People ask me at times, and I know my wife said to me, you're showing a black and white 3-hour and 54-minute film that's in Japanese with subtitles, yeah, and I said, you bet we are.
Exactly.
So again, there's some daunting descriptors about this film, but it's an extraordinary film, and I know you love it very much too.
It is deeply rooted in Japanese culture. Akiro Kurosawa was a director who was widely influenced by and influenced many American directors, including people like John Ford and Howard Hawks. And in very many ways, it will be familiar to Americans because of the nature of the American Western, okay, which you can view this film as being Western-like. The fundamental storyline is deceptively simple. It's the concept of a village of poor rural farmers who are being plagued by roving marauders who routinely steal from them, okay? Take their money, take their rice, take their women. And being non-trained military types, they seek out assistance from some ronin who are samurai, and ronin are samurai. Samurai had a personal relationship with their masters, and if that master was killed or in some way lost power, they became masterless, and ronin refers to a masterless samurai.
Right.
Okay? So they basically were cut loose and on their own, and so some of them became plundering bandits. Others served, at least in this film, to protect the villagers who were being plundered by other ronin. The problem the villagers have is that they are very poor. They have no resource, they have no money, they have no way to pay for protection. So they must seek out ronin who are willing to work simply for food and for their keep, to protect them from the marauding bandits. And as the first part of the film deals primarily with their quest to find these knights of Japan, okay, or the cowboys of the Old West, who are willing to work for nothing, essentially, okay, or just for the rice, they will be fed. And when they're discussing this in the village, the question was asked, how do we find samurai or ronin who are willing to work just for food? And advice an elder gives them is find hungry samurai, okay? And so that's basically the first part of the film. Then the one samurai they find or ronin rather, who they find who is willing to participate, come by. The next part of the story is his putting together the remaining ronin to assist him at the village.
Almost like the Dirty Dozen or the Magnificent Seven.
Exactly, exactly,
yeah.
Like the Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
In fact, the Magnificent Seven is a remake of the Seven Samurai.
Okay. And Kanbei is such a dignified person.
Yes.
And he has so much humility.
Right.
And it's interesting, again, it's been a few years since I've seen the film. I'm really looking forward to seeing it again. But I recall it's almost like a trial, you know, as they come in.
Right.
Some of the samurai are aware that the area is booby-trapped,
right.
and some are not.
Yeah.
But even, I think at least one or two of the guys who doesn't know that, they still accept them?
Yes. And throughout, the film emphasizes the ancient caste system that was traditionally held by the Japanese culture. Okay? The film itself takes place during the 16th century, a time of great turmoil and confusion. Okay? The traditional Japanese emperors had been either overthrown or lost power in some way. And so the traditional power structure, the traditional social structure of the culture had been disrupted. And many people point to this film as being not only an historic piece, but one that's allegorical of Japan in the decade following World War II. At least to the extent that in Japan, with the fall of the Japanese Empire, right. and with the deposition of the emperor, everybody in Japan became a ronin, okay, a masterless individual trying to sure. re-establish some form of culture. Okay? The film plays with a lot of the traditional cultural perspectives of the Japanese. Again, one of those being the caste system. Other themes that are played out in the film deal with aspects such as the concept of perseverance. There's a Japanese saying which is fall down 7 times, get up 8
times, sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
And you see that play out through the film too, because everybody does play a role in this. The villagers have their traditional role as the farmers who are suspicious of the samurai and of the ronin. Okay? The samurai themselves, out of a sense of nobility, out of a sense of obligation, are willing to essentially lay down their lives in defense of their culture. Even the attacking hordes, right, the enemy, they keep coming back and back and back. So no matter how many times they attack the village and they're beaten off, and eventually you do the sense that they must realize that they're not going to win, okay? But they just keep attacking anyway. Because that concept of perseverance is, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, as long as you keep trying. Okay? And when I was doing some research on the film, it struck me that you get a sense of that as late as the 1970s. If you go back and look at some of the news reports from that period of time, even as late as the 1970s, 30 years after the end of World War II, they were still finding on isolated little islands throughout the Pacific, they were finding Japanese soldiers who were still fighting World War II.
Right, and refused to give up.
They refused to give up. Their emperor told them never to surrender, and they did not. Okay? So that sense of perseverance is a part of the code that the samurai lived by, and you see it. So many of these cultural aspects are played out within this film.
Yeah. Now, I've always argued that any good film should be universal. And as an English professor for over 3 decades, I've been accused of liking rom-coms, and I'd rather see a Jane Austen movie than a you know, some kind of action film. And that's true, because I find it more interesting. It was interesting to me because we have 4 dorms here, 4 filled dorms with students, and I have 2 different RAs bringing their floors for each of the 9 films, because I thought this is an important co-curricular activity. You know, you have to come to one of the films, and the RAs are bringing their floors. I briefly described all 9 films to the 16 RAs at the start of the term, and almost immediately 2 male RAs selected this film.
Good.
And so I think you know the inference I'm going to draw from that. I thought, oh, is this a guy film because it has battles and samurais and fighting and things like that? However, one of the samurais, Katsushiro, am I pronouncing his name correctly? Very young, very handsome. There's a love interest there, right? So it's an action film. but it's a rom-dram. It's not. It's certainly not a romantic comedy,
No.
but it's a romantic drama to a certain degree. Can you talk about that relationship? And I vaguely remember the female character.
Yeah. That part of the film goes to re-emphasize the caste system. In fact, the father of the girl involved in this love relationship, before the samurai show up to protect the village, he's heard they are coming. So he has his daughter change her style of dress and cut
like
her hair so she will appear not to be female, right? The fear on the part of the father is the mistrust of the samurai and the fact that they have been known to pillage, plunder, rape, and burn, right? Okay. And so to protect his daughter, he had her change her style of dress and her appearance. But besides that, there is a scene in which they do meet in a forest, okay, and a love relationship does evolve. And as you said, it's a dramatic romance. It is not a pleasant one, because as a result of the romance that does develop, the father turns on the daughter. And in some cases, very violently, actually, okay? So that caste system is reinforced. But as far as the guy thing, okay, one of the points of the film is this. It does emphasize the concept of male friendship, or the brotherhood of the samurai, or the ronin, okay? And so as Kenbai is putting his troop together, some he recruits just off the street. He is joined later by a samurai who they had fought together, and they had fought in several losing battles. And so a friendship does develop. And one of the interesting things that Kurosawa does is he breaks out of some of the mythic concepts of the samurai. You know, the idea of dying nobly is a good way to die, right? Okay. And there's a conversation between Kenbai and his friend who's talking about the battles that they have survived before. Okay? And when the friend is asked how did he survive them, and he survived them by hiding in a grove, okay? And that how did he survive other battles? By running away. And Kenbai even says, smart move. Okay?
Yeah.
So you do have those kind of archetypal. One of the fascinating things about the film, I think, is in Kurosawa's filming techniques, and he taps into those natural kind of elements, the archetypes that, we all are universal and we all recognize. So if you'll notice in the battle scenes, there is always one or the other of the natural elements. There is wind, there is fire, there is water, okay? There is earth, okay? And that really comes to a great conclusion at the final battle scene. It's being held during the middle of a rainstorm.
Right, right.
But if you watch the battles before that, there's always wind, there's always some natural forces at play as the battles are taking place. Yeah. So it does take it back to nature.
Right. And of course the Seventh Samurai is what people usually often take away from the film. Right. Kikuchiyo, am I pronouncing that at least close to that? And he is a samurai in name only, but he very much wants to join, and he does. He helps. I remember the funny scenes helping him train the people in the village and things like that.
And in that context, this film has been so widely copied and Kurosawa's techniques so widely used that, for example, in Star Wars, okay, the character of Luke is very much like the character you just described from Seven Samurai. He's also like the novitiate, okay, like the samurai in training that Kenbai has. So Luke wants to be, in Star Wars, he wants to be a warrior, but he's stuck at home on the farm.
Right, he's too young at the start.
Excuse me. And the final warrior you're talking about, the samurai, is not really a samurai. Okay?
Right.
He has sort of doctored up some paperwork that makes him look like he's a samurai. Right. He is in reality a farmer. So just like Luke in Star Wars, right?
Sure.
There's this farmer, young boy, who wants to be a samurai. And so you see those kind of connections. And George Lucas was very, very much influenced by Kurosawa and by this film. Okay. And going back to the concept of the Western, one of Kurosawa's later films was remade in Italy by Sergio Leone, okay, and it became
a spaghetti western.
It became a fistful of dollars,
sure,
which is what led to the spaghetti western trend in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
And so you just, case after case, you see the influence this film has had, okay, on other filmmakers. Kurosawa is credited with being the first filmmaker to use the over-the-horizon shot, okay? The first time you see the enemy approaching, you see them come over an horizon. And then that concept was used by people like Steven Spielberg in Close Encounters. It's been used routinely by other Western makers in America.
There's a number of close-ups too. I don't think it's one of the Seven Samurai, but one of the town leaders has a face of anguish repeatedly. It's just, it's the most horrific look of anguish. You know what I'm talking about? That's one of the things that resonates now years after the last time I saw the film. But again, I'm looking forward to seeing it this Sunday night. I think this would be a good time to show the trailer that's in open domain, and so give our audience a sense of the kinds of visuals.
ある山間の小さな村に侍の墓が4つ並んだ。野心と巧妙に疲れた狂気の時代に全く明理を顧みず哀れな百姓たちのために戦った7人の侍の話。彼らは無名のまま風のように去った。しかし彼らの優しい心と勇ましい行為は今なお美しく語り伝えられている。彼らこそ侍だ。黒澤明が描く壮烈な叙事詩。彼らはこの旗のもとに戦った。どういうわけだこら。これは田んぼの田の字、つまり百姓たち、この村だな。この丸は俺たちだ。なんだよ、6つしかねえじゃねえか。俺はのけもんか。いや、この三角が菊千代様だ。これ7人の侍の中の変わり種、野育ちの暴れん坊。襲い来るは野武士、戦国の生んだ才郎の群れ。
でも、もしかしたら死ぬんだべ。
最後の決戦の日は雨だった。残るは13。これは全部捕らえれん。その前を通り過ぎると同時に追い打ちをかけて村の辻で挟み撃ちだ。勝負はこの一撃で決まる。
Thompson and his staff of students and Patrick Dengel for providing that for us. As I was looking at that trailer again, I thought of the Roman expression ars longa vita brevis, meaning art is long, life is short.
Right.
And that's a film that now is 61 years old, and it's in black and white. But I would argue, and I think you would as well, that it's still relevant and it's still current. But having said that, as an English professor for over 3 decades now, I recall showing the 1940 Hamlet with Laurence Olivier. And my students laughed at it. This was 15 years ago. They just laughed at it because Olivier in 1940 is so stylized. So since then I've used the Kenneth Branagh version, which is a much more contemporary Hamlet. So just the same way I hear sometimes we need to translate great works every generation because of how life changes.
Right.
You know, certain Protestants still use the King James Bible, but when I talk to biblical theologians, they say, no, you have to use this newer edition because that was too artistic. Tell me about, so essentially what I'm asking is this dated? And for the students who say, oh, I don't want to come to the film, what do I say to them when I say, no, it's not dated, it's current?
Well, it is current in the sense that the themes, as you said earlier, are universal. Okay? The symbolism, I think, is universal. And I do think that once you allow yourself to get into this film, you will find it, the audience will find it to be very engrossing. I do know what you mean, though. It's like many of Kurosawa's filming techniques were innovative at the time. You saw in the video clip some sequences of the battle scenes.
Sure.
And Kurosawa was very innovative when he shot that. He had multiple cameras shooting the same action, and in some cases at different speed. And then he intercut those together. As one critic said, when you watch those battle scenes at the end, you feel like you've got mud all over you by the time the sequence is over.
It seems like it's rained for years at the end of the movie.
But it is a problem in the sense it's like if you deal with like Citizen Kane, classic films, that for a younger audience, if you talk to them about the innovative film techniques that they're going to see, they see them and then they can say quite validly, well, I've seen those 1,000 times in movies, right? Again, like with Citizen Kane and Orson Welles' use of spacing and of shadows and of proportion. What they need to understand is prior to this film, you would not have seen those techniques, okay? So these are techniques that have been picked up by other filmmakers and used routinely. And this film has been a template for so many different kind of westerns, action films. I mean, one of the fundamental problematics of any kind of action film or western or adventure is the justification of violence. For the samurai to win, they have to be just as violent as their opponents. Okay? So you have to be able to justify the action of the hero against the villain, and again, the hero has to ultimately be more violent than the villain. And so many things you didn't see the leader of the attacking horde, okay? But when you see it in the film, you will notice something quite distinct if you're a fan of Star Wars, that the helmet he wears and the helmet that Darth Vader wears are essentially the same. It's the same shape, okay? A later film, okay, that came out of the 1970s, a thing called Battle Beyond the Stars, okay, which is 7 individuals on a spaceship going out to fight an enemy. Okay, and in that film, the attackers are named Akir. The name of the planet they come from is Akir, and the people who live on that planet are known as Akira. Okay, so a direct
Kurosawa's first name, sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And you just see that over and over again.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in film studies at all, or just interested in a really good film, okay, the experience, this can give you some groundwork for study of and appreciation of other movies.
Yeah. Larry, we just have a few minutes left. As a takeaway point for both the film and our discussion, you've provided some excellent materials to me and will to the students a week from Sunday night about how the 7 characters reflect the 7 virtues of the samurai.
Right.
That's rectitude, courage, benevolence, respect, honor, loyalty, and honesty.
Right.
Can you talk about that briefly? And again, we only have about 2 minutes left.
And
so,
again, it's one of those characteristics that good screenwriters will use, would be to endow their characters with certain elements that are honored within a society. Okay, so that every character in the 7 Samurai reflects, to some extent, the nature of that code, okay, that was considered to be important by the samurai. So, is there a loyalty there? Yes, okay, and reflected by characters. Is there perseverance? Okay, is there honor? And indeed there are. And so, for many of the characters in the film, it comes down to, if you're going to die, you might as well die for a noble cause. And if you're going to die, you might as well die among your friends, okay? So you find those things reflected in any good cultural film. And this is an excellent cultural film. I really urge individuals to turn out to see it.
Well, that's great. Larry, thank you so much. The half hour's
sir.
gone quickly. It's a fascinating film. Again, 7 Samurai, Akiro Kurosawa. This Friday night, a week from Sunday night, October 25th in Woodhall Auditorium. It's specifically for RIO students, but certainly, any members of the public in the area can certainly come here. We're located in RIO Grande, Ohio, just off the State Road 325 exit of US 35, which I'm now told, having been here a year and a half, I'm supposed to call the 4-lane.
Oh,
Is
really?
that right? Yeah, yeah. It's we're on this side of the 4-lane, and you get off the 4-lane, and we're real close. Woodhall. Thanks again, Larry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you to the production staff.